If you found out you're going to die next week, what would you regret never having the energy, courage, or time to do? And if you can answer that question, boom, you have a purpose anchor. You should start building a life of purpose around that.
Welcome to the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, the weekly show for nomads, work campers, RVers, and entrepreneurs looking to earn a living or build a business while enjoying the RV lifestyle. This week's host is Jim Nelson. Let's settle in and enjoy the RV Entrepreneur Podcast, brought to you by RV Life.
Shall we play a game? I just had the most fun chatting with my guest for this episode of the RVE podcast. I can't wait to share this discussion with you. Why? His first comment says it all, and that was about the gamification of life. As RV entrepreneurs, that's what we're all doing. We're playing this game, balancing life and work, living life to the fullest, while trying to figure out how we can keep it going. Once again, it comes down to purpose. And Dr. Jordan Grumet has written the book on that subject. If you're wondering, in any way, how to win this game we call life, I highly encourage you to check out The Purpose Code. In his book, and in our discussion, Doc G breaks down the code for defining and fulfilling our purpose. How do we find it? How do we know if it's right for us? And importantly, how can it pay the bills? Doc G is a self-proclaimed semi-retired medical doctor. He's also a financial guru and host of the Earn and Invest podcast. Spoiler alert though, purpose is not about the money. The internet bros are going to hate this episode because it's more about fulfillment and how having purpose helps you find that. But purpose is not some major goal you strive toward. Doc G explains the difference between that big P and the little P's in life and business that matter much more. He also helps us understand the nuance between happiness versus purpose versus meaning. And we take a close look at the FIRE movement and how financial independence retire early mindset can be both a blessing and a curse, depending on which path you choose. Along the way, Doc G tells some fun stories and an interesting parable about the three brothers. So join me on this path to discover true meaning and happiness with the Purpose Code author, Dr. Jordan Grumet, right after this short detour.
Hey RVers, let's be real. Your RV showerhead isn't great, and even if you swapped it out for something better, chances are it's just a shinier version of the same old thing. And if you're really lucky, those stiff hose kind of let you get wet, but definitely not where you want it. That's where Waterpik comes in. A global leader in water technology, they've designed the Transform RV showerhead to change the way you shower on the road, making it easier and more efficient to shower in tight RV spaces. While other RV showerheads have limited spray adjustments, the Transform RV's unique 360-degree pivoting head allows you to customize to any spray angle without having to remove it from the bracket. This means you can reach your desired spray area and shower with both hands free. This shower head doesn't just work better, it feels better. It's engineered to deliver powerful, consistent water flow. Its multiple spray settings are optimized to get the most out of your water tank. And with the new trickle switch, you can conserve water without that shocking blast of cold or hot water when you turn it back on. It's available in white, chrome, and nickel. The Waterpik Transform RV Showerhead is ready to upgrade your RV shower. Head over to Amazon and check it out now.
Doc G, so nice to meet you. Thank you very much for joining us on the RV Entrepreneur. Welcome to the show.
Jim, so happy to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
Oh, I'm excited too. I especially want to dive into the new book and all of that. But this is the RV Entrepreneur podcast, RV Life Entrepreneur to be specific. And I think digital nomads and other working RVers kind of share a similar interest or mindset with entrepreneurs everywhere, or anyone really interested in financial independence. We all want to live life to the fullest, and we tend to make our own rules. So tell me, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur to you?
I think entrepreneurship is the ultimate gamifying of life. And so what I really love about it is you have this thing that you're interested in and you want to tell the world about. Maybe it's a service, maybe it's a product, maybe it's an idea. And so your role then is to package it, build it, and sell it to other people. And I found it very joyful. So I've done lots of things in my life. My main job was to be a physician for years, and now I'm a blogger, podcaster, and author. But I've sold lots of things in the meantime. So I used to sell artwork. I used to sell baseball cards. I used to sell candy as a little kid. And so the art of the sale to me is just fascinating and enjoyable. And so I think that is like the key to all of what we do. And even nowadays, whether you're a doctor, an engineer, a CPA, or a business person, we're all selling ourselves. And so it starts with those experiences of trying to sell things.
Fantastic. And I'm having a deja vu from a very recent episode I did where I explained how I sold guppies as a child. When I learned that guppies mate and end up with lots of babies, I ended up selling the guppies. So listeners be bored with me telling that story again, but it is all selling. I've been in marketing my whole life, and I've always just said it's sales without the commission. But we're going to talk about the FIRE movement and explain what that is. And I wanted to back up a bit here and get a little backstory about a few things you mentioned there. A doctor, an author, now blogger. What was your original career path that you took, and how did that evolve into what you're doing today?
So originally, I had planned to be a doctor for my whole life. So my father was a physician, and he died suddenly when he was 40 and I was 7. And I cosmically thought I could solve all the problems in the world by just becoming a doctor like him. Like that would solve all of these things that happened to me. And so I very joyfully actually went into this idea of becoming a doctor and went to medical school and residency and was out there practicing for a while and realized that it wasn't filling me up as much as I had hoped it would. And it certainly didn't solve the cosmic problem of my father dying. And so I had this big version of purpose that being a doctor was supposed to fulfill, and it never did. And so I burnt out really quickly and had to look for an escape hatch. And there's where the financial independence movement enters the story, because I had been lucky enough to be brought up by parents, my mom and my stepdad, who had really great financial modeling. They taught me how to save. They taught me how to invest. They owned real estate, so I ended up owning real estate. They were entrepreneurs, so I eventually owned businesses. And so when I discovered financial independence, I started looking at my numbers and realized that I was pretty much there or not that far away. And so I could leave medicine, never do it again, and live the great life. The question was, what is the great life? I actually had a panic attack trying to figure out what life looked like outside of being a doctor, because it was the only purpose and identity I had ever known. But that gave me some of the space to really start pursuing some of these other things. One thing I realized is that I didn't hate all of medicine. I actually really liked hospice medicine. So I kept doing a little bit of that because that felt really purposeful to me. But it did open up a lot of time and space in my life to pursue these other things like personal finance, blogging, podcasting, and eventually book writing.
So I wasn't aware of the FIRE movement until it actually started making a big buzz in the in the media over the past few years, maybe 5-10 years back. But we were already practicing financial independence. We had hit the road and we were supporting ourselves and wanted to quote unquote retire. But I hate that word. I've always hated retirement. It sounds like being put out to pasture to me. But the majority of full-time RVers that I see are retired. They worked their default life, maybe saved up enough, then bought an RV and hit the road at a time when they may not be able to enjoy their travels quite as much. And that's one reason Renee and I kept on RVing after planning for a year off and just figuring out how to make it work. So what are your thoughts on like traditional retirement as most people know it and the retirement investment planning that we're all taught?
Well, I often tell a story, and it's a parable, and I call it the parable of the three brothers. And the reason I tell the parable of the three brothers is because really my belief is that we should decide what purpose looks like in our life and then build a life of financial independence around it. Not the other way around, not build the path of financial independence and then decide what purpose is. And so I often talk about this parable because I think there are multiple ways to get there. And a lot of times, because we're not open-minded or because no one taught us, we don't realize that we can have both purpose and excitement and joy, as well as build a life of financial independence. So the parable is really simple. It's just the story of three brothers, and they all set off on a journey of a lifetime, and they each take three separate paths. The eldest brother doesn't even like the path, and so he rushes his way through. He suffers a lot. He skips meals. He skips sleep. He gets to the end as fast as he could because once he gets to the end, he'll be free. And so when he gets there, he has tons of time to enjoy his freedom, many, many, many years. He's a little bit tired, but it's a sacrifice he was more than willing to make. He didn't mind grinding it out. The middle brother also doesn't particularly like his path, but he doesn't have the strength and determination of the eldest brother, so he takes lots of breaks, right? So he'll go for a while, and then he runs out of steam and takes a flight of fancy out into the fields or up into the mountains, but then comes back and starts again. He gets there a little bit later than the first brother, and he has less time to enjoy his freedom, but he does have a lot more energy. And then finally, there's the youngest brother. And the youngest brother isn't like either of the other brothers. He actually loves the path. He loves to hike. And so he takes his sweet time and enjoys the change of seasons and the trees and the rivers and the sun beating down on his head. So it's many, many, many years after the eldest and the middle brother that the youngest brother finally reaches his destination. But when he gets there, he does something that neither of the other brothers can quite understand. He turns around and walks back the way he came.
Mm.
And I like talking about this parable because it's really, to me, it can have to do with a lot of things. It can have to do with how we build our careers or our relationships or our finances or financial independence. But I love it as a story of financial independence to suggest that there are multiple different ways we can get there. So the eldest brother is like the typical FIRE devotee, financial independence, retire early. They're going to grind it out. They're going to take purpose, put it to the side and say, I don't have time for that right now. They're going to grind it out for a decade or two, make lots and lots of money. And then once they have enough money, they feel like they don't have to work anymore. They're going to quit, and then they're going to live a life of purpose, identity, connections, all the important stuff.
Sure.
The middle brothers tend to be the people who are interested in passive income and side hustles. So they're going to really grind it out just for 2 or 3 years until they make enough monthly income to cover their monthly needs. And then they're going to start pursuing purpose and doing what they want because they're not as busy. It's really a faster way to financial independence, but you probably are going to have to maintain those side hustles and passive income longer. So you're going to probably have a longer career.
Right.
And then last but not least, the youngest brother is like, this is the passion play. This is like, I love what I do for a living and I would do it even if you weren't paying me for it. So you could be financially independent immediately. Like you get done with college or high school, start working at a job you love, and you're financially independent as long as you can pay the bills. But again, your career is going to be really, really long because you're going to have to work to your 80s or you'll run out of money. And so I think either path is fine. Like you can get to financial independence in a lot of different ways. But the real question for you is how are you going to bring that purpose, identity, connections into your life as soon as possible and maximize it?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's the real connection between kind of purpose, financial independence, and career per se.
Sure. And being the youngest brother in my family, it really resonates with me. And it resonates with my current life because I do turn around and go back and enjoy the path. And I'll be doing this much longer, but I'm also going to be enjoying it.
So who needs to retire? Like the idea of retirement, maybe why we all hate it is because we think there's something we must retire from, something we loathe.
Right.
But what if you fill up your life with stuff you like and you happen to make money doing it? Then why ever would you retire if you like doing it? Unless you can find something you like doing more. And that's a whole nother story.
Sure.
But like, I'd rather have a life that I don't feel like I have to retire from.
And it brings up a term that I heard you say somewhere along the way. I understand you began a new chapter in life by becoming, quote unquote, semi-retired around 45. And I've also found that term kind of funny. What does it mean to be semi-retired? Are we talking about that middle child or what is semi-retirement?
So this is why I call it semi-retired. I mean, in a sense, emotionally, I'm totally retired. Like
Sure.
at the age of 45, I started just doing whatever the heck I wanted, regardless of the money. So in my brain, I was retired. On the other hand, to the outer world, I was still making money because I was doing hospice work. And eventually I did a blog and a podcast and I was making money in other ways. So a lot of the world wouldn't have called that retired, yet I had all the kind of beauty and freedom and agency that people associate with retire. So I like that idea of semi-retired means I kind of live the life I want to live, but I happen to also still make money.
That makes total sense. And in that case, I too am semi-retired. But we all want financial independence. We want to, quote unquote, retire early. So what exactly is the FIRE movement in simple terms for those who may not know?
So the FIRE movement is this idea that you can save up enough money so that invested wisely, that money will support you so you don't have to work anymore. And so the idea is you can look at your savings rate, and if you can build up your savings rate to 30% or 50% or 75% within 3 to 10 years, you can save up enough money to cover you so that if it's invested in getting reasonable market returns, that money could last you a good 30 years. And so that was like the traditional FIRE movement. Now, like I said, FIRE has evolved. And so that middle brother path of passive income and side hustles is a newer version where it's like, well, I don't have to save up such a huge amount of money anymore. I can just start these side hustles and have some passive income that covers my monthly needs. I still don't have that huge net worth in the bank, but I have these income streams that support me. We see this a lot like in real estate people, right? They get a certain number of doors in real estate and then the income from the real estate covers them, but they're still doing some work here and there. And they don't have a huge net worth in the bank invested. And I think even the newer version is doing what you do, which is more kind of the passion play and lifestyle design. It's like, well, I could grind it out, do something I hate, make lots of money, and not enjoy the next 10 years so that I eventually get my freedom. Or I can take a job that I really like, and maybe I'll make a lot less money. And so I'm going to have to stay at that job for many, many more years. But I'm kind of living the life I want to live. And so it feels like financial independence. So it's really evolved into much more of a lifestyle design than it started, let's say, 10 years ago as.
This episode is made possible by Travelify. Want reliable internet without the hassle? Meet Travelify. It's portable, high-speed Wi-Fi that's ready to go wherever you are. From road trips to remote cabins. No tricky setup or permanent location required. Just plug in and you're connected. And here's the best part. No contracts, no commitments, and no reactivation fees. Pay only for the months you need. Travelify connects to the strongest available signal among multiple major networks, so you stay online with confidence, backed by a US-based support team that knows the outdoor lifestyle. Travelify, simplifying internet while you travel. Visit Travelify.com today. That's TRAVLFI.com. Listeners can save 15% with code RVE at checkout. Yeah, and you know me all too well there, but I manage a very large work campers group on Facebook. There's 200,000 members now, and just over the past few months, maybe the past year, I've noticed a lot more spammers joining the group, touting the FIRE flag. So is FIRE starting to get a bad rep, or are there bad apples that are using it? Or what are you seeing there? Because I just noticed this recently.
I think FIRE can be a force of really amazing good, but I also think it can be a force of evil, maybe for different reasons than other people think. So yes, there's certainly people who are making money off of FIRE. They're trying to sell you a course, trying to sell you a book, trying to sell you something that's going to tell you this is really easy and this is the key to a good life. I think FIRE can be used for evil for a different reason. And the reason is it focuses too much on money. Listen, money is a great tool, but it's not a great goal. And so people who get involved in the FIRE movement sometimes think of it as a goal. And so they set all their hopes on getting to some net worth number and they think it's so great. And then they get there and realize that they still have all the same problems they had before, except that they have money, right? So the relationship problems, the life problems, they're all still there. But the other thing is they realize is the pursuit of money doesn't really feel much like purpose. It's a very short-term goal. And we as human beings need deeper things that fill us up more. So the reason why it's not always the great thing is it just focuses too much time on money, whereas we really want to use that money as a tool to live the life we want to live. And so we want to spend a lot more time thinking about, well, what kind of life do we want to live and what does purpose look like in our life before we concentrate on the money? And that gets back to the order of operations I think we get wrong is we put the money first.
That's so true. And I often tell new solopreneurs or people who want to go off and do something that if you're going to do it for the money, pick something else. I mean, you unless you're the type of entrepreneur that's going to grow fast, sell, and get out and do it again, it's just not going to fulfill you. But when we say retire early, and because it comes back to the money is a necessity. And if we want in our older age or in our quote unquote retirement years to be comfortable, we'll need a certain amount of money. But when it comes to retiring early, what is early and how early? What do we need to do to make that date even earlier? I'm sure it's different for everyone, but talk to me about that.
It used to be 65 was retirement date, right? And so the first FIRE practitioners were talking about, retiring in their 50s and 40s. Now you have people talking about doing it in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
And so the question is, well, how early you can retire? Well, A, it depends on how much money you make. And then B, it depends on how much money you spend. And so there are people who've gotten really, really frugal who maybe live in something like an RV, who their housing costs are very low. Maybe they have a garden or they just don't spend that much money on food and they buy all their clothes at Goodwill. There are people, there's a guy, early retirement now, right? Started blogging in the early 2000s and he was living off of $10,000 a year in Chicago, in the city, by the way. And so you could, depending on if you find a way to live off very little money, you could be financially independent within a few years by saving, most of your salary and then living off very little.
It's going to be different for everyone, of course. So you mentioned making money and spending money. That comes down to money management, and there's a huge industry in money managers. But what is traditionally, quote unquote, good money management, and why do you view it as a hurdle?
So I think good money management is basically one of two things, really. One is saving more than you spend. So we're really talking about the gap between what you make and what you spend. And then the second piece of it is just investing it wisely. And so that can look like the stock market, broad-based index investing. That can look like real estate if you buy the right type of properties. Those are really the two main mechanisms. And so why is it a hurdle? Because human nature is not to do those things. Right. Human nature is not to save, no matter how much we know that this is important and this is how we get to financial independence. Human nature is not to do that. And then human nature is to invest incorrectly. Like instead of putting money in index funds, people want to pick stocks. Or when the stock market goes down, but you're invested in a good index fund, you want to buy more, not sell. But human nature tells you, oh, I better sell because the stock market's going down. And so I think that's why it's a hurdle. It's not that it's particularly difficult to understand. It's just that human nature sometimes pushes us in a different direction.
So regarding direction and, the people's ultimate goals, I originally had the traditional retirement at a certain age, make a certain amount by that time. I read somewhere along the line that you're a proponent for people doing their own retirement investing rather than, putting faith in a financial advisor. I'm my financial expert. I trust my advisor 100%. We meet every year and look at that trajectory and I'm still on target. So I take the word of the advisor. Whereas do you disagree with doing that? Or is there a fine line somewhere or do you do it yourself?
So I don't disagree. So let me talk about the nuance. First and foremost, about 50 to 70% of people can't stomach the decisions you have to make for investing, even when they're easy. Mm-hmm. So if you can't stomach, for instance, holding on to your stocks or your index funds when the market's going down, then you need someone else to do that for you, hands down. And that's actually a good percentage of the population. So for people who can't stomach the ups and downs of the stock market, someone else should be investing for you. The next caveat, if you are drawing down on a portfolio, so if you are retired and drawing down on a portfolio between Social Security, taxes, and Medicare and all those kind of things, it actually makes sense to have a good advisor because the drawdown strategy is difficult and figuring out your tax situation is difficult. So I think having a good financial advisor at that time of your life is also important. When do you not need a financial advisor? When you are young and making money and you're in the accumulation phase, it's pretty much a no-brainer. Take all your money and put it in a broad-based index fund, and you're going to do better than 80 or 90% of people. You can hire an advisor, and they're going to charge you thousands and thousands of dollars a year. That's fine. But when you're in the accumulation phase and you have a pretty simple portfolio, we're saying that you're not complex. You don't have a disabled family member. You're not, paying for your parents, all these kind of things that make you more complex. But the grand majority of people are in the accumulation phase. What they don't realize is they're worried about what their stocks are going to return. And that's fine. And we can maximize that with an index fund. But the biggest driver of wealth when you're young is your income. Mm-hmm. It's not how you invest. It is your income and how you spend. So if you have a good income and you spend reasonably, and then you just manage to get your money into reasonable index funds, you're going to do fine. You probably don't need an advisor to do that for you.
Maybe I misunderstood. So you're not a proponent for day trading and getting into cyber funds and all that sort of thing? Day
traders generally lose money.
Thank you.
Stock investing looks more like broad-based index funds that you hold on to for decades.
Smart. And that's where I am. I'm in it for the long term. If it goes up or down, I don't look at the numbers. I'll check in periodically and know that I'm still on target. And I
Yeah.
think that's what matters
My
most.
Jedi mind trick is when the stock market is going up, I check my balances every day. And when the stock market is going down, I ignore it until it starts going up again.
Oh, wonderful.
That's my
Smart.
Jedi mind trick.
Pay attention when it matters, and it'll help you along the way. So now let's get to the book, The Purpose Code. Great title. It really resonates with me because I'm a firm believer in purpose over kind of mere passion. And many of my discussions on this show have boiled down to pursuing and serving that purpose. Most of our listeners are either dreaming of starting a business on the road or they're doing it. For someone who isn't sure or maybe they're having doubts about their own pursuit, maybe they don't know how to identify their purpose, I think your book could really help them understand if they're on the right track or not. So how to get on it. So let's talk about something I saw in your book there about happiness versus purpose versus meaning. You distinguish between these three. What are the differences?
So a lot of people have trouble differentiating the three. And so what I say is happiness is meaning and purpose. And a lot of people say, well, aren't meaning and purpose the same thing? And I say, no, not at all. And here's how I think they're different. Meaning are the cognitive thoughts and stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, and they have everything to do with the past. So it's about thinking and it's about the past. These are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And happy people tend to tell themselves heroic stories. Like, I was younger, I had this trauma, I had these problems. I was enough as a person, so I got through them. And that's why I am where I am today. It's a very heroic story. So they think that they're going to pretty much do fine in the present and future. Unhappy people tend to tell themselves a victim story. They say, well, I was thwarted when I had this trauma and these problems in the past. And so I never was enough. I never got to where I needed to be. And so I'll probably continue to be thwarted in the present and future. Meaning is all about your cognitive journey to feeling enough. Purpose, on the other hand, is about your present and future and is all about actions. It's basically doing the things that light you up. No more, no less. When you have a good sense of meaning and feel like you are enough, you can then jump into purpose joyfully and do things that light you up without trying to prove your worthiness, right? Once you feel enough already because you have a good sense of meaning, you're like, I don't have to use purpose to prove I'm good enough. I don't have to use purpose to prove anything. I can just go and enjoy myself and do things I love. And I think that is the best prescription for happiness.
Fantastic. It's like that life work balance we all seek. It's a perfect dance of these things. Was there any, you mentioned the younger and being younger and trauma. Did you personally have any epiphany when you discovered this equation, or when did that? Oh yeah.
I mean, look at my story. My father died when I was 7, and I thought because I was 7, I thought I was somehow responsible. And so I developed what I call a big, audacious version of purpose. My purpose was to make up for the fact that my dad died, because somehow cosmically I was responsible for it, and also to save the world because I wanted to be a doctor like him. And so it was very goal-oriented. It was very hard to reach. And so I spent my young adulthood getting there, and something terrible happened, right? I became a doctor and realized I couldn't solve the fact that my dad died. Like, my whole purpose in becoming a doctor, it was big and audacious and also unreachable. And I also couldn't save the whole world. Like, I could help people from time to time. And so that's where burnout comes in, is this version of big, audacious purpose that I couldn't reach, that was very goal-oriented. I found that the harder I worked at it, the less happy I was, and I got more and more burned out. And so very much it made me realize, and thank God I had been smart enough with my money, that I could step away from this big, audacious version of purpose, which wasn't filling me, and start thinking about what I call little p purpose, which is, instead of being goal-oriented, is process-oriented. And so I could start thinking, well, what things light me up? What do I love the activity of being involved in? And how can I build more of that into my life? And that was the real epiphany for me when I realized that, hey, people think purpose is this big, complicated thing. And trust me, when I wrote my first book, Taking Stock, which is about kind of what I learned about money and life from being a hospice doctor, a big message of that book is we should be putting purpose first and then build our financial framework. And I went out on the road to market this book, and I went to all sorts of conferences and gave talks, and people would come up to me after the talks and they'd be angry. And they'd be like, why do you keep telling me to find purpose? I can't find it. I've been looking my whole life. I'm really frustrated. Stop telling me to find purpose. And so that made me do a big deep dive into purpose. And I realized that while the studies show that having a sense of purpose in life does lead to happiness, health, and longevity, tons of studies, there are also other studies that show that up to 91% of people at some point in life get purpose anxiety. Like this idea that purpose is out there, they can't find it, makes them feel frustrated and depressed. And so that conundrum is why I wrote the book Purpose Code. And that was the conundrum of my childhood. I was going after this big, audacious version of purpose that wasn't serving me when I probably should have been trying to get involved with what I call little p purpose, which is just very process oriented.
So I want to get back to the big P and the little p in just a minute, but I'm smiling here because there's no coincidences in life. And on a recent episode, I interviewed Harvest Host CEO Joel Holland, who ended up doing what he did because of burnout. And he's really the ultimate RVE entrepreneur success story. But he mentioned his own fulfillment formula. And on the episode, he mentions happiness equals freedom plus meaningfulness. So is there any true happiness equation? May it be different? I see some similarities here.
Well, so he mentioned pretty much everything that I mentioned, but just with different words. And so meaning plus purpose equals happiness. Well, he talks about meaningfulness, and then he talks about freedom. But that's kind of what purpose is. Purpose is the freedom to move into the present and future and do things that light you up. And that's what we're all looking for. It's that agency, that control over our lives. And so I think we're really talking about the same thing. I think it's the same equation.
Doing things that light you up. That really kind of defines purpose for me, which gives me the freedom to do what I do. So what do you mean by big P versus little p? Should we not be pursuing that big purpose in life? Focus on these little p's?
Big P purpose, I believe, is toxic always. And here's why. Big P purpose is goal-oriented. And because it's goal-oriented, it's two things. It's goal-oriented and it's usually audacious. And the reason why it's audacious is because we've been taught, especially in America, if you can think it, you can build it. And so we're always given these big audacious goals of what we're supposed to be doing in life. But the problem is a lot of times we can't actually succeed at these things. Like if I want to be president or I want to cure cancer or I want to travel to Mars, those are all things that it's highly likely I'm going to fail because I'm not the right person at the right time, saying the right things with the right genetics and a whole lot of luck. And so if any of those things aren't there, you're going to fail. And so it doesn't feel abundant. It feels really scarce. It feels all or nothing, winner take all. Like only one person can be president. Everyone else loses. If that's your goal, you either win or you lose. Compare that to little p purpose, which is process oriented. So this is abundant. Like think about the million things you could enjoy doing and you could spend your time doing those. It's impossible to fail. Like if you start doing something you don't like doing it, just stop and do something else. And so instead of being all or nothing, it's all or all. And so that's the crux of the difference. Now I'll tell you, you can have little p purpose and goals. So for instance, I love podcasting. It's my little p purpose. When I get in front of the mic, I am the happiest I ever get. I lose track of time. I love interviewing people. That's my little p purpose. But you know what? I can create goals, even big audacious goals. I can say I want 1 million downloads to my podcast every month. Here's why this doesn't become big P purpose. It doesn't become big P purpose because whether I achieve that goal or not, I'm fairly goal agnostic. Like I'd love to achieve 1 million downloads a month, but even if I get 0 downloads a month and I still love what I'm doing day to day and love recording with other people, then that's still little p purpose. It turns into big audacious purpose when you start saying, well, I want 1 million downloads a month and I'm not getting there. And what I'm doing isn't working. So now I have to make TikTok videos and reels on Instagram. And guess what? I hate making TikTok videos and reels on Instagram, but I'm going to fill my time doing these things because that's what I need to get 1 million downloads. That's when it becomes big P purpose, when you stop enjoying the process in order to meet a pre-specified goal.
And that becomes toxic. And I'm reminded of another recent episode. We were talking about goals at the new year and that sort of thing. And I stuck by my guns, which is a belief to set the bar low. And all the internet bros will tell you, oh, you got to go for the gold, set the hot and don't failure and all that. But I agree in getting over those little hurdles and getting that boost of adrenaline and doing it again and working up to those, what you look back as the big goal after jumping over all those little P's. So
yeah, what you're talking about, incremental gain. And I think incremental gain can very much be a part of little P purpose. Getting back to podcasting. So if I really want to get 1 million downloads a month and I love interviewing people, I can study interviewers. Like I can listen to Terry Gross on NPR and see how she does it. I can take a class. If I'm interested in this, I could take a class on how to be a better interviewer. And if that lights me up and I like doing that, then that's a really nice incremental way. What we're talking about is making changes in which you have agency to control those changes and the outcome. And I think that's all really good. I love when you hear about all these tech bros and the crypto bros and all this about how you should be killing it and you should be making these big goals. But you look at them and none of those guys really look happy.
No.
Most of the time they look particularly stressed out. I mean, even when you look at some of the most well-known people in pop culture, Steve Jobs was a perfect one. Mm-hmm. Steve Jobs had big, audacious goals. He made more money than anyone. He created some of the greatest tech. And the guy looked horribly unhappy most of his life and was kind of cruel a lot of his life. We know this from his biographies. Like, I don't want to be that person. I'd rather be less successful, but really enjoy what I'm doing.
Hey, RVers, let's be real. Your RV showerhead isn't great. And even if you swapped it out for something better, chances are it's just a shinier version of the same old thing. And if you're really lucky, those stiff hose kind of let you get wet, but definitely not where you want it. That's where Waterpik comes in. A global leader in water technology, they've designed the Transform RV showerhead to change the way you shower on the road, making it easier and more efficient to shower in tight RV spaces. While other RV showerheads have limited spray adjustments, the Transform RV's unique 360-degree pivoting head allows you to customize to any spray angle without having to remove it from the bracket. This means you can reach your desired spray area and shower with both hands free. This showerhead doesn't just work better, it feels better. It's engineered to deliver powerful, consistent water flow. Its multiple spray settings are optimized to get the most out of your water tank. And with the new trickle switch, you can conserve water without that shocking blast of cold or hot water when you turn it back on. It's available in white, chrome, and nickel. The Waterpik Transform RV Showerhead is ready to upgrade your RV shower. Head over to Amazon and check it out now.
And that brings me back to the whole life-work balance that we're often talking about on this show. And I always view it as, if you do the work you love, it becomes your life. So it's kind of, there's no balance involved. It's more of a yin-yang flow. So would you say that life-work balance is attainable? And how do we do that? Or what is it?
So, I mean, it all depends on which path you want to take to financial independence. If you want to be traditional fire practitioner, then you want to grind it out and you don't love work. And so you're really making a very clear decision on work-life balance that you're going to tilt towards work in the beginning. On the other hand, if you're the other side and you're the passion play, the youngest brother, you're doing the exact opposite. You're saying, I want more life. In this case, work is part of life. I think ultimately, once we start realizing what we love, we build a life around that. And when we get closer to financial independence, we stop differentiating between work and life. Like, I make no differentiation between work and life. I spend maybe 60 hours a week doing my quote unquote work activities, but I have all the time in the world because I'll do them for a few hours in the morning. Then I'll go take a walk. Then I'll read a book. And then when my wife and I are watching TV, I'll get back on the computer, do a few things while I'm half paying attention to TV, half doing what I'm doing. And then Saturday night comes along and I get inspired and I write a blog post because I'm excited and I want to do it. And then, I don't get the Sunday scaries. Like Sunday night, I'm not stressed out about Monday. I don't think I have work in life. I just have life. I do certain activities during certain parts of it and other activities. I don't think there's a balance. I feel like it's all life.
And there's that perfect balance. It's more of a synergy. And I'm taken back to my marketing days in Silicon Valley where we'd go away for a weekend, come back, hit the traffic at the Bay Bridge, and it's Sunday night and we only have X number of hours before we're going to go back and get on that treadmill again. It's just
it's exhausting.
Crazy. It's crazy.
It's exhausting.
And it comes down to one thing I read in one of your quotes about connections. You say true contentment. That's what I wanted to say. It comes back to being content rather than happy. But true contentment comes from fulfilling our lives with enriching activities that lead to connection and ultimately legacy. So define and discuss the importance of connection. Are we talking about community and that sort of thing? And where do you find that, especially if you live on the road?
So I actually stopped differentiating between self-actualization, contentment, and happiness because basically what we're trying to do is describe some level of fulfillment that we're all trying to reach. Not the momentary, I eat an ice cream cone, I feel happy for a second because it
Right?
tastes good. We're talking about the long-term feeling of connectedness and fulfillment. So the real question is, how do you get there? And so let me tell you the secret about my book.
Hmm.
There are a lot of studies about happiness, and one of the best is the Harvard Adult Developmental Health Study. Started in the 1930s. They took a bunch of Harvard students and they had them fill out questionnaires every 2 years. And eventually they started bringing in the Harvard family members. And eventually they got control groups from the Boston area. And as the years went on and technology got better, they started drawing blood. They started doing MRIs, EEGs, all sorts of testing. And they did it for 80 years. And one of the main questions they asked was, what makes people happy? And after 80 years, guess what? They found that money doesn't make people happy. Achievements don't make people happy. Your job doesn't make people happy. And here's a big surprise, and I'll explain in a moment. They didn't even find that purpose makes people happy. You know what they found really makes people happy? Interpersonal connections. It's the people that truly makes you happy. So I just said they didn't find that purpose makes you happy, but then I said earlier that all these studies show that having a sense of purpose leads to health, happiness, and longevity. Here's the thing. When you engage in little p purpose, you're doing something that lights you up. It fulfills you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're lit up like a moth to a flame, you attract other people. And so when you're doing things that are deeply important to you, you end up forming what I call communities of internal purpose. These are communities not based on identity, like I live in this area, or I'm a heterosexual male, or I'm this religion. Those are all identity communities. I'm talking about communities of internal purpose. I love podcasting, so I'm part of that community. I love writing books. I'm an author, so I'm part of that community. So what happens when you do these things that light you up, it connects you to other people who are also lit up by the same thing, and you end up collaborating with them. If they have something to teach you, they become your teacher. If they have something to learn from you, they become your student. You become mentor, mentee, and this is where we form these groups of people that end up being the connections that lead to happiness. So purpose is a great conduit to community and connections. You are a perfect example. My bet is your love of RVing, the fact that it lights you up and it excites you has not only led to a job, but it's probably led you to communities and connections, and you will live longer and be happier because you now feel a part of something bigger than yourself.
100%. And you literally defined the success with our tripods community, with the pet amputation people, because we've made a connection with our purpose, and that purpose is serving other people. So it's the connection indirectly to hundreds and even thousands of people over the years through having this purpose, knowing that we never want them to feel lost and alone again. So we serve this purpose, and that purpose trickles out, and we hope it trickles out even further through community.
And here's what's really funny. People think that they have to go for bigger types of purpose because it's going to have an impact and legacy. And the thing about it is actually the happiness, the contentment, the helping actually comes from more the little p purpose. A perfect example is I have a friend, Fritz Gilbert. He writes the Retirement Manifesto. You might have heard of him. But you're talking about your charity and it has to do with animals. Well, he also has a charity having to do with animals. It's called, Freedom for Fido. And so he lives in Appalachia and he sees a lot of dogs that are locked up and tied to chains. And so him and his wife felt very deeply that they needed to do something for the world. And so they started building fences for people so that they could unchain their dogs.
Wow.
But they really love the work and they really love the dogs. And here's something that really exciting happened. He started doing this and they ended up getting lots of volunteers. And those volunteers became a community. And now they go build these fences for dogs. And then afterward, they go to happy hour and they all hang out. And this has become his social crew. This has become the people that he's most connected with. And so he started out by doing something he loved, something that excited him, not something huge that was going to change the world. He wasn't curing cancer. He was just trying to improve his little area of the world. And it ended up leading to all this beneficial, great stuff. And now they have this troop of people who build fences for dogs all over the place. And so there are all these people, all these animals that are having a better life because he pursued something that felt like little p purpose to him and his wife.
That's one less degree of separation there between us, because we were just recently featured in the book Unchained by Mutt's creator Patrick McDonnell, and I don't need to go down that rabbit hole. You can check the show notes for that. But can purpose pay the bills? I remember Deepak Chopra saying, do what you love and you'll do it well and then you'll be rewarded. But how do we know when purpose and financial wellness intersect, or how do we make sure they do?
That's a big question. Can purpose pay the bills? And the answer is sometimes, but it doesn't have to. And let me give you a few good reasons and also give a little bit of a warning. So here are a few good reasons why it doesn't have to. We can add purpose into our lives in so many different ways. And one of the ways is to do it outside of work. And so even if you don't love your job and you're making money and you're really good at it, if you spend a few hours on the weekend doing something you love doing, whether it's building fences for dogs or writing books or whatever it is you love, you're improving your life and building purpose into your life. And you'll probably burn out less at your job because you have a lot more of a life out at home and you're happier. That's the first part. But the other thing is, as we get older and move farther, a lot of times we can start bringing that purpose into our work lives. So I have a really good friend who works in corporate America, and her job is kind of meh. Like, she doesn't love it, she doesn't hate it, but she's really good at it and makes a lot of money. And so she realized that it wasn't fulfilling her sense of purpose, but there was something she was really excited about. She loved to talk about women's place in corporate America. And so she started a blog about it in her free time. She did exactly what I said. She had a few extra hours and she did that. Well, her community grew and grew and her programs grew and grew. And so she decided to create a program for her job. She just volunteered. She's like, I work in one of the biggest corporations ever. I would like to bring these programs to my job. So she volunteered and she did it at work for 6 months. Her programs were so popular, her boss eventually came to her and said, you know what? I only want you to do your job part-time now. The other 50% of your time, I want you to create these programs. So she started bringing purpose into her life, but before she knew it, her work life started getting better too, because she was getting rid of something she didn't like and adding in something she did like, but now she was getting paid for it. One caveat, there is this theory about internal motivation and extrinsic rewards. It comes from behavioral theory. And it's this idea that when we take something we're highly intrinsically motivated to do, a passion, a purpose, and then we receive external rewards for it, like money, it sometimes kills our internal drive. So it's something you have to be really careful for. I love to illustrate this by telling a story.
Sure.
So here's the story. Imagine that we all lived on this really long block, and at the end of the block was this old curmudgeonly guy whose joy in life was his lawn and his flower bed. And so he would spend all day working on his lawn and his flower bed, but at the end of the day, he'd get tired. And when he went into the house, the neighborhood kids would extend their football game right onto his lawn, and they would trample. They'd ruin his little piece of heaven. So the old guy begged, he pleaded, he asked them nicely, but to no avail. So eventually he decided to use his knowledge of behavioral theory to play a trick on them. So one day he goes out to the kids and he says, you know what? I think you playing football on my lawn is actually fertilizing the soil. So I'm going to pay you $10 each a week. Play football as much as you want. And at the end of the week, we'll reassess. Now, the kids are overjoyed because not only do they get to do what they intrinsically want to do, which is play football, but now they have money to buy candy. So for the whole week, the kids play football and their hearts are full and their pockets are full of candy. 7 days later, the guy comes back and he decides to turn the screws. So he looks at the kids and he says, you know what? You're not doing nearly as good of a job as I thought. I'm going to still pay you, but this week I'm only going to pay you $5. Let's have you play football all week. Let's see what happens. Now, the kids are a little miffed, but they like playing football and they like eating candy. So for the next 7 days, they play football and their hearts are full and they're maybe just a little bit less and their pockets are a little less full of candy. Finally, at the end of the 7 days, the guy comes back. He says, you know what? You're doing a horrible job. The lawn looks no better. You can play football on my lawn as much as you want, but I'm not paying you another cent. Now, the kids stomp their feet. They get really angry. They point their finger at them. And they say, we don't care how much you pay us. We are never playing football on your lawn again. They turn around, they walk away, and they never come back. So the point is, sometimes when we take something we're highly intrinsically motivated to do, a passion, and we receive money for it, it sometimes kills our internal drive.
Sure.
So you have to be careful about pursuing a passion to make money, because sometimes you find you're not very passionate about it anymore.
So if it's not paying the bills in that sense, how do we know if we're pursuing the right purpose for us, or that is going to lead to fulfillment?
Oh, that's easy. Does it light you up? Do you wake up in the morning bounding out of bed because you want to do it? Do you have trouble sleeping at night because you're already thinking about what you're going to do the next day? Is it an inkling, a beckoning, a calling? I mean, people say, boy, I can't find my purpose. And I say, first of all, you don't find your purpose, you build it. But you do need to find these inklings, these beckonings, what I call purpose anchors. But most people, when you really push them, they can find their purpose anchors. I'm a hospice doctor. So the first thing I ask is I say, well, if you found out you're going to die next week, what would you regret never having the energy, courage, or time to do? And if you can answer that question, boom, you have a purpose anchor. You should start building a life of purpose around that. Another way is, look at the joys of childhood. Like, what did you love as a kid? I loved baseball cards. And so I'm so busy now, I don't have time for it. But when I'm on Facebook and I see something about baseball cards, it lights me up. I know if I really wanted to, build the life of purpose, I have a great purpose anchor, baseball cards. There's all sorts of other ways to find purpose anchors. It's actually not that hard.
I like to say we didn't find our purpose, it found us. And it grew organically out of what we were doing that we loved doing. And those acknowledgments that we got were at first a gut feeling, just because it felt good what we were doing. We weren't making nearly as much money as we used to. It felt good. But years went on, and those acknowledgments came back from our members, veterinarians referring them to us. So it was that sense of accomplishment that was going on. But can our purposes change throughout life?
Yes.
And what would you tell to people who they feel the need for change, but they have guilt about no longer fulfilling that purpose?
I think you can have one overarching purpose for most of your life, or many. Your purpose can change weekly, daily, monthly, or yearly. There really are no rules. The only rule is you have to enjoy the process of doing it. If you're not enjoying yourself while you're doing it, then you're probably taking the wrong path. But I have tons of versions of purpose. Podcasting is a version of purpose for me. I love it. But so is reading books and walking. At one point in my life, being a doctor was very purposeful, but now it isn't. I used to love baseball cards. That felt like purpose. Now I'm busier with other things. It doesn't matter. Do things you love. And when you stop loving them, stop doing those things and do something else.
Do things you love, folks. Remember that. And there is a certain formula for purpose out there that I'm sure you're familiar with, Ikigai. I'm a big believer in Ikigai. I'm guessing you're familiar with it. But recently, I saw an argument on social media about how Ikigai is BS and won't help anyone find fulfillment. I disagree, but what's your take on how passion and a mission combined with one's vocation and profession can help people fulfill their purpose? Is that what we've been talking about all along?
So I don't think vocation and profession really matter. I don't think it matters what you're good at. Look, I was the best doctor in the world. I was really good, but it wasn't filling me up. It wasn't lighting me up. I'm not as good of an author as I was a doctor, but that's what I love to do. So I don't think vocation and profession are important. I don't even think setting out to helping people is important, although I think you do get a lot of benefits from that. I think do the things you love that light you up, and it will lead to everything else. I think it'll lead to changing the world. It'll lead to connecting to other people. It might lead to a profession and making money. I don't think we have to worry about the other stuff. Like, we don't have to worry about what we're good at. We don't have to worry about what's going to change the world. Just do things you enjoy the process of doing, and whether you mean to or not, you're going to change the world.
I don't think I could put it any more than that. I think it's a perfect way to land this plane here. Doc G, this has been amazing. You're a doctor, an author, a podcast host, a financial guru, a speaker. What are you most proud of, and where can people learn more?
Oh, so I'm by far most proud of being an author. I mean, I knew that writing was important to me when one day I Googled my name, and instead of saying doctor, blogger, podcaster, it said author. And I'm like, I've finally been seen. So to me, I'm most proud of, and probably most really identify with, this idea of being an author. The easiest place to find me is to go to jordangrumet.com. That's JORDANGRUMET.com. There you can find ways to buy both of my books, Taking Stock in the Purpose Code, as well as links to all the places I create content, including the Earn and Invest podcast and the Purpose Code Substack. Check it out, jordangrumet.com.
Doc G, It's been fantastic. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm definitely going to be following along. I encourage everyone else to do the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, which brother are you? What path are you traveling? If you're anything like me, you're cruising down the road toward true fulfillment, and that means finding purpose in the work you do. I'm that youngest brother, literally, and figuratively as far as that parable goes. I am taking my time and enjoying the ride. I may not be making nearly as much money as I may have had I stayed on that hedonistic treadmill that the default life had me on, but I'm enjoying the ride. I may be at it much longer than some others out there, but this work lights me up. Some of the retired full-time RVers I see out there are living proof that we made the right decision to pursue financial independence and retire early, even if it is semi-retirement. What are you doing as an RV entrepreneur? Remember that bit about connection? Check in and let us know in the RVE community group to connect with others. Check out the purpose code at jordangrumet.com, and whatever it is you're doing to pay the bills, remember.
Do things you love. And when you stop loving them, stop doing those things and do something else.
Are you ready to elevate your RVing adventures? With RV Life Pro, you're not just getting a service. You're gaining a reliable companion for your journey. From planning your trips with precision to navigating with confidence and even connecting with a vibrant community of fellow RV enthusiasts, RV Life Pro is your all-in-one solution. Don't just dream about the perfect adventure, live it. Visit rvlife.com today and discover how RV Life can enhance your RVing experience.